The moment you stop reacting impulsively is the moment you begin stepping into your power. In a world where everyone is quick to defend, to explain, to retaliate, learning to pause is a radical act. Most people live in a state of constant emotional reaction, like a leaf tossed around by the wind, always at the mercy of whatever or whoever blows their way. They get triggered by a careless word, offended by a look, thrown off by the smallest deviation from their expectations. And without realizing it, every time they react emotionally, they are giving away a piece of their power. To become untouchable, you must understand this. Your reaction is your weakness. Every time you react impulsively, you are broadcasting that others have the ability to affect you. It's like holding up a sign that says, "I am easily controlled." This is what makes people easy to manipulate: predictability. If someone knows what triggers you, they can own you. They can guide your emotions like a remote control in their hand, pushing your buttons at will. And that's no way to live. Carl Jung once said that uncontrolled emotions are a reflection of unintegrated shadows within ourselves. In other words, when something shakes you, when a comment, a person, or a situation disturbs your peace, it's not because it's inherently powerful. It's because there's a part of you that hasn't been resolved, something within that you haven't fully mastered. And that's where the real work begins. The issue is rarely external. The battlefield is within. Why do you react so much? Because you care too much, and often about things that don't actually matter. You care too much about what others think of you. You crave their approval, their validation, their acceptance. You seek reassurance that you belong, that you are liked, that you are understood. But all of this external neediness chains you to a life of reactivity. The truly untouchable people, those rare few who seem unmoved by criticism, chaos, or conflict, have realized something powerful. Not everything deserves their energy, and even fewer things deserve their reaction. And so they become mysterious, still, grounded. They don't flinch when challenged, and they don't rush to defend themselves at the first sign of disapproval. Why? Because they no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. They've stopped living life on the emotional defense. They've outgrown the urge to explain themselves. Instead, they conserve their energy like it's gold, because it is. The moment you begin to choose stillness over reaction, presence over impulse, you reclaim your emotional sovereignty. Imagine this. Someone insults you, hoping to provoke a reaction. But you just look at them, calm and unbothered. Your expression doesn't shift. Your energy remains intact. That person walks away confused, maybe even frustrated, because they didn't get what they came for, your energy. That's what it means to be untouchable. Not immune to emotion, but so emotionally disciplined that nothing can shake your foundation. This kind of emotional control doesn't come overnight. It's a practice, a commitment to no longer being ruled by your environment. You start by doing something simple yet profound: pausing. Just a few seconds between stimulus and response. That tiny space is where your power lives. In that space, you get to decide, does this really deserve a reaction? And more often than not, the answer is no. What you'll find is that most of the things that once triggered you lose their grip when you meet them with calm observation instead of emotional chaos. There is something transformational about learning to observe without identifying. Jung talked about this often, the power of watching your emotions like clouds passing through the sky rather than storms you must get caught in. You can feel something without being owned by it. You can witness the discomfort rise and choose not to act on it. That's power. That's maturity. And it's also freedom. This doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It means you start caring selectively. You choose what deserves your attention, your emotional investment, your presence. You practice something called selective indifference, not apathy, but mastery. It's not about numbing your emotions, it's about elevating them, choosing when to engage and when to simply let things be. You learn to let go of the need to react, and in doing so, you also begin to let go of the need to control everything. The truth is, so much of our suffering comes from attachment. Attachment to outcomes, to people, to how we want things to go. But attachment is a heavy chain. It binds you to fear, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being alone. And fear, as you've probably realized by now, is a master manipulator. It convinces you to hold on to things that are no longer meant for you. It whispers that letting go means losing. But that's the biggest lie of all. Letting go is not weakness. It is strength. It is choosing peace over possession. And the moment you learn to release, to detach, you free yourself. You make space for clarity, for truth, for growth. Jung understood this deeply. He believed that the process of individuation, of becoming whole, involved detachment. Because the self cannot emerge while it is still clinging to things that were never aligned with its evolution. Think of all the times you stayed somewhere you no longer belonged. The job that drained you. The relationship that left you empty. The situations where you kept hoping something would change, while deep down you knew it never would. We hold on because we fear what will happen if we let go. But the real question is, what might blossom in your life if you did? Letting go begins with acceptance. Accepting that some people are not meant to stay forever. Accepting that some things were only meant to teach you, not complete you. Accepting that not all chapters in your life will have closure. And that's okay. You don't have to force a happy ending. Sometimes the freedom lies in walking away, even when it's hard. It's also about confronting your fears head on. Fear of being alone. Fear of making a mistake. Fear that you'll regret it. But when you finally sit with those fears, when you stop running and really look them in the eye, you realize they're not as big as you imagined. The weight you were carrying wasn't the situation itself. It was your resistance to letting it go. Try this. Think of something you're struggling to release. A thought, a person, a situation. Now ask yourself, what if I simply let it go? Visualize what it would feel like to not carry that burden anymore. The peace, the lightness, the return of your inner space. That feeling is a signal. It's your soul's way of telling you, this is the way forward. When you truly embrace the mindset of letting go, something inside of you shifts. You stop living in scarcity. You stop chasing. You stop forcing. You start trusting that what is meant for you will find its way, without manipulation, without desperation. You realize that anything that requires you to lose your peace is too expensive. And you begin to walk away from anything that doesn't nourish your soul. But there's one more secret ingredient to becoming untouchable: silence. In a world that is constantly loud, the one who holds their silence holds real power. Silence is not weakness. It is control. It is presence. It is mystery. And people fear what they cannot read. When you stop explaining yourself, stop justifying your choices, stop narrating your every move, you become untouchable in a whole new way. Most people give away too much. They over-explain, overshare, overreact. Every unnecessary word becomes a data point that others can use against them. But the one who is silent, who moves quietly, who guards their energy, becomes a mystery. A force. Someone who cannot be predicted, boxed in, or manipulated. In relationships, silence keeps your value high. In business, it protects your strategy. In life, it creates intrigue. When you no longer feel the need to be seen or heard all the time, when you're okay being misunderstood, you gain a level of self-possession that most people never experience. Carl Jung understood the power of introspection. He knew that those who look within, who speak less and observe more, who act without needing applause, are the ones who control their reality. And the world responds differently to someone who doesn't need validation, who doesn't need to announce their worth. Their presence says it all. So here it is: emotional control, detachment, and silence. These three are not just tools. They are the foundation of becoming untouchable. Not because you no longer feel, but because you no longer fold. Because your peace is no longer negotiable. Because your power is no longer external. And when you reach that place, when you stop reacting, when you let go, when you move in silence, everything changes. You're no longer a puppet to your emotions. You're no longer available to what drains you. You've reclaimed your energy, your focus, your essence. And in that state, untouched and unwavering, you finally meet the strongest version of yourself. There is immense power in silence. In a world where everyone is rushing to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, the one who holds their tongue, the one who listens more than they speak, becomes magnetic. Not everyone needs to know what you're thinking. Not everyone deserves access to the sanctuary that is your mind. When you speak less and observe more, you begin to notice the invisible threads connecting every interaction, the things people try to hide, the truths they unknowingly reveal. And as you grow quieter, something inside you sharpens. You stop reacting. You start reading the room. You sense the tension before it's spoken, feel the energy before the words arrive. Silence isn't passive. It's calculated. It's a choice. And it's one of the most strategic moves you can ever make. The moment you stop giving away everything, your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, you start to reclaim your power. People can only play games with the information you give them. If they don't know what you're thinking, they can't manipulate you. If they can't predict your next move, they're already off balance. There's something undeniably powerful about unpredictability. When people can't place you, they watch you more carefully. They hesitate. They respect you, not necessarily because they understand you, but because they can't figure you out. And mystery? Mystery always commands attention. When you speak only when necessary, when every word feels intentional, people lean in closer. They listen more intently. Silence creates space, and in that space, you gain leverage. That's the paradox. When you stop trying to be heard, your voice carries more weight. When you stop explaining yourself, your decisions feel final. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to justify anything. You don't beg for understanding. You don't ask for permission. You simply act and let the results speak for themselves. There's power in letting people wonder, in not revealing everything at once, in keeping pieces of yourself tucked away. Curiosity thrives in the unknown. When you leave room for people to wonder, to question, to try and figure you out, you stay relevant in their minds. When you're always available, always explaining, always revealing, you become predictable. And predictable rarely inspires respect. Predictable doesn't move the needle. Predictable blends in. But when you walk into a room and people can't quite read you, can't figure out if you're a threat or an ally, can't tell what you're thinking or feeling, you become unforgettable. Control extends beyond words. It's in how you carry yourself, in your body language, your facial expressions, the way you pause before you speak, a steady gaze, a calm presence, a neutral expression. All of it sends signals that say, I don't need to prove anything. I'm already enough. People pay attention to energy long before they process your words. When you're grounded in yourself, when you don't fidget, overreact, or overshare, your presence becomes heavy in the best way, like a storm that hasn't broken yet. Quiet, charged, unignorable. And here's the truth. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. True power is calm, quiet, still. People who are comfortable in silence are not trying to convince you of anything. They know who they are. They don't chase. They don't beg. They let others do the performing. Meanwhile, they simply exist, and in that stillness, they radiate something rare, something magnetic, something that cannot be faked. As you grow in this energy, you begin to prioritize something even more valuable, yourself. Because the second you start choosing yourself over approval, over acceptance, over people pleasing, the entire dynamic changes. Most people live their lives backwards, constantly putting others first, giving more than they receive, bending until they break just to keep the peace. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, overlooked, and unappreciated. The truth is, every time you put yourself last, you teach the world that you are okay with being treated that way. You become an option, never a priority. But when you flip the script, when you start making yourself a priority, people take notice. You set standards. You demand more without saying a word. You stop overextending. You stop explaining. You stop apologizing for taking up space. And here's where the shift happens. The people who once took you for granted start to feel your absence. The ones who assumed you'd always be there, always available, always giving, suddenly realize you're not so easy to reach, not so eager to please, not so willing to bend. This is when the power returns to you. Not because you made a scene, not because you screamed or begged for respect, but because you stopped handing yourself out like free samples. You stopped trying to prove you were worthy of love, attention, or validation. You started showing it to yourself first. And that changes everything. There is a reason people are drawn to those who seem unattainable. It's not about arrogance. It's not about being cold. It's about energy. The kind of energy that says, I'm good either way, whether you stay or go, whether you approve or disapprove, whether you give me attention or ignore me, I'm still solid. I'm still standing. I'm still me. When you reach that level of inner strength, you become untouchable. Not because you never feel pain or doubt, but because you no longer let it dictate your behavior. You process it privately. You grow from it, but you never let it make you desperate. Desperation repels. Self-assurance attracts. And you'll notice something else at this level. You stop chasing things. You stop chasing people, opportunities, recognition. You understand that anything that is meant for you will not require you to shrink, to perform, to beg. You begin to move differently. You become more selective with your time, your energy, your words. And ironically, when you stop chasing, you start attracting. Because people want to be around those who don't need them. Independence is magnetic. Confidence is contagious. So what happens when you fully step into this energy? The world responds to you differently. People treat you with more respect. They seek you out, but they don't know why. They want your attention, but can't quite figure out how to earn it. That's what mystery does. It keeps people engaged. It makes them want more. You no longer have to force things. You simply become, and your being is enough. But this isn't a one-time transformation. This is a daily decision. Every time you feel the urge to overshare, to over-explain, to say yes when you mean no, you're being given a chance to choose differently, to choose yourself, to reinforce your boundaries, to stay grounded in your worth. You'll be tested. There will be moments where silence feels uncomfortable, moments where you'll want to be understood, to be liked, to fit in. But here's the thing, the more you prioritize peace over pleasing, the more magnetic you become. People are drawn to those who don't need the room to love them, but somehow end up being the most loved. And here's the ultimate truth. The moment you stop chasing, begging, and explaining, you become the mystery. And mystery always wins. Mystery creates space. Space creates desire. Desire creates respect. And respect is the foundation of any relationship worth keeping, whether personal or professional. When you prioritize yourself, you send out a frequency that says, I'm not available for anything less than what aligns with my worth. And the people who resonate with that frequency will find you. The ones who don't, let them drift away. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is meant to stay. So let them be confused. Let them wonder why you've changed. Let them feel the shift, because that shift is you coming home to yourself, to your power, to your truth. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more presence. And presence comes from within, from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer accept. So the next time you're tempted to explain, to apologize, to overextend, pause. Breathe. Remember who you are. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world. You don't owe anyone your energy. You only owe yourself the peace of living fully, unapologetically, and with complete ownership of your worth. This is your power. This is your silence. This is your transformation. And once you truly embrace it, there's no going back.